Huh? There. Oh. Huh? Wah. Dur.
Hey now, and welcome down to KC Toy Reviews. We are here today with the Venom Slayer by Art Figures, aka Bane from the video game Injustice Part 2. Now, I am happy to report that this is a quality figure. However, there are a few missteps and, well, unfortunate to say, one gigantic one. And if you're at all curious what that is, let's go ahead and fine-comb the details and dive right the hell goddamn in. Alright, so let's go ahead and start off in this view, and well, for a couple particular reasons, because we're going to kill two birds with one stone. For starters, you need to know what the hell you're looking at. So you might be asking yourself, why the hell do we have the old school Hot Toys Arkham Batman next to this new Bane? They are not from the same video game series. However, this is the closest video game representation to Batman I had, and we do need to understand that scale is a big part of this review, which, unfortunate to say, leads to one of the biggest gripes I have with this figure, and is that Art Figures completely botched the scale of this figure. If anybody is familiar with Injustice 2, the video game, Bane is massive, so when I now have him side by side with another Batman in my collection, it truly emphasizes how much they botched the scale of this. And I mean so much so, it actually looks like Batman is bigger than Bane in this situation. If you do note, the base that Bane is on is actually quite a bit thicker than the one that Batman's on. So the fact that his base is thinner and he's a little bit taller just means that, like, yeah, he's way bigger than Bane in this situation, which makes no sense whatsoever. Okay, so now back to a pure focus on the figure itself, and, well, again, I was pleasantly surprised to say the initial observation was, it's good. And I would say that it does look damn close to the promo pics. The fact that, and if I remember the promo pics on this guy, they looked very digital, almost Photoshopped, to the point where I couldn't tell if it looked that damn good or if they're Photoshop pictures. But I am, again, happy to say that it is damn close to those promo pictures. And even a lot of the shots, I say based off of articulation, most of the time you cannot pull those things off. Well, on this guy you can. Articulation is actually very, very good, even in the midsection for as large as he looks. The elbows appear to be single jointed, but the legs appear to be double jointed, so you have a lot more movement on the bottom half. But overall, you can pose him in a ton of different ways because of his articulation. Now, if you are familiar, Art Figures recently, and I'm not sure if this was their last release or not, but the last release that I had by Art Figures was Crossbones, and I believe they called it The Mercenary. Now, this was Crossbones from the Captain America Civil War movie, not the comic version, and I thought they did a fantastic job with it. It was very high quality, it felt good, and it looked like Hot Toys quality once it was next to Captain America and some of the other figures on my shelf. The downfall to that figure / experience was it was Build-A-Bear next level. And what I mean by that is you had to put all these little nooks and crannies and pieces and pistons and basically build him like a Gundam experience. It really was. It was like that. It was awful. To then get him into that badass suit. And the end result was great. To get him there, the experience was piss poor. And the only reason I mention that is there was some similarities with this guy where I would question Art Figures. If you're gonna give us something that's cool like this, why the hell are we still building part of it out of the box? So I might understand it with his hoses in the back. Those we had to plug in, and we'll get to those in a little bit more detail in a bit. What I was more perplexed about was the wrist pieces. So this entire wrist piece, I had to pluck the hand off and put that on there, which, no big deal. It was just more like, why? Why didn't you guys just do it? Because nobody's going to display it without the wrist piece, so it just didn't make sense that I would have to put the wrist piece on there. And the next piece would be this leather chest piece that goes around him, probably more pleather. Same thing, once we get to the back, I'll show you there's some slight pain in the ass experience parts to putting that thing on. And I would challenge to say, why the hell didn't you guys just put it on? Or sculpt it and leave it in there permanently? It just didn't make sense. And then lastly, we can't see it in the shot here, but his knee pads too. You had to put his knee pads on, kind of like your kids. You put the knee pads on before they go rollerblading, but it just didn't make sense. I was like, just put them on for me. Let me pull him out of the box, impose him, and just look at him in all his glory versus having to build him like a Build-A-Bear experience. This was more Build-A-Bear experience. The Mercenary, again, by Art Figures was totally Gundam experience. That was like, it was just awful. So I'm glad to see that we're getting a little bit better, but Art Figures, just put it together and put it in the box like that. I mean, come on, we don't want to build this thing. Now, as we take a closer look at the head sculpt here, it is pretty badass. I think they did a really, really good job. There's not too much movement with it as far as going up and down. Articulation on the head sculpt was a little bit limited, but as far as the way it looked, it's really, really good. Now, one cool thing to point out, the way they pulled this off, is this piece, as we mentioned, I had to put on here myself, but the way the headpiece sits on top is really nice because of the way they've brought this hard plastic right up into the back of the neck, and it sits on top of a cloth jacket. And the reason I say it's nice is because it brings it right up tight into his neck piece there, so it looks like his head is firmly sitting on top of there like a beefy kind of... Oh! Now, the reason I say it's nice is because as we take a look at this angle here, it comes right up into the back of his neck almost, and it really emphasizes the strength and the power of his shoulder area. And we also kind of have this puffed out chest piece here as well. So the way it's brought all together up until the shoulders and then the neck and the headpiece sits on top of it, in my opinion, truly emphasizes that Bane look. I'll also say I really like the way they pulled off those menacing, squinting red eyes with this metal tip to his mask. And then we have the little air vents on the side. Overall, the head sculpt that sits on top of the suit is really badass. And I know it's ripped straight from the video games, but Art Figures did a really good job at bringing this thing to life. Now, as we swing to the back and take a look at probably the most important part of Bane, would be the backpack and hose system that delivers all of his strength, and unfortunate to say there was a couple missteps back here. Now, putting the backpack on was a pain in the ass. There was these tiny little buttons and I literally had to take a flashlight and try to line them up. There was 4 all in that connected with the bandolier piece here, and for the life of me, I could only get 3 out of the 4 plugged in. I could not get that 4th one plugged in. It boggles my mind when we are in 2022 and everybody's using these magnet systems and you're going to put those crazy little button systems on the back of this. There just could have been a smoother and better way to execute putting the backpack on his back. And then the hoses themselves, let's see if we can take a look here. It almost just reminds me of like an electrical tape that's around a garden hose. Now, it might not necessarily be a bad thing because it adds a little bit of texture to it because this is actually spun around here. The issue that I see is that over time, the adhesive could start to fail and it could possibly start to unravel. And of course, I could be completely wrong. This could last for the next 10 years. It's just one thing that I could see as some of the corners of some of them are already slightly starting to come up. I won't spend too much time in this shot. I do just want to stress that there's an actual little metal belt buckle on here, which was kind of cool. So that part was neat. That's on top of a pleather belt. This material here is pleather. I had to put these knee pads on, the rollerblade knee pads, like I mentioned. Not sure why they just couldn't come already on. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then as we can see, the army pants are tailored pretty nicely. I mean, I don't have many complaints. I think the way the legs are, they're a little more skinny than the top, but it works because it makes that top half look beefier. And something about that just adds to the video game look of this character. And then I guess lastly, very excited to say, the base is badass. This came with a really good stand. I probably overlooked this in the promo pictures, but as we can see right in the front, nicely labeled Venom Slayer versus the company like Thunder Toys, which puts their company on the front of their stands. Absolutely ridiculous. So thumbs up, Art Toys. We have a nice Venom Slayer in the front. And then on top, as you can kind of see there, it's like a Batman symbol. So if you pair this Batman symbol with the Great look, well, the Batman symbol looks like the Dark Knight. The Great looks like the Dark Knight. I mean, these are just straight up ripped from the Dark Knight Rises with Bane, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I was actually really excited for it, and the paint application is nice too. It was just really interesting to see a Dark Knight Rises-ish base paired with the Injustice version of Bane. But ultimately, I do think it complements the character well, and it's a great addition to this. And then not much to say about the boots. Really good look to them, a slight weathered approach, just like the knee pads and the armor at the top half. And just overall, the way they look and the way the pants tuck into them, I just think they did a really good job. So there we have it. Now, as we start to wrap this up and slap a score on this guy, some final closing notes. For starters, I am still very disappointed at the scale of this guy. As much as he impresses me, even as it spins and shot right now, it looks really, really good. Had he been just a few inches larger, and I know that would have been a pain in the ass for the team, and that's probably why they didn't do it, but can you imagine how badass of a figure we would have on our shelves? It quite possibly would have been one of the best Bane figures out there on the market. And well, in somebody's opinion, maybe this still is. But when I have it next to a Batman video game series and the Batman's bigger than him, it just comes across as slightly disappointing in my opinion. But I think that was one of the biggest issues I had with it. As far as the quality control concerns go, they are small, minor gripes. The way that the plastic is spun around the green tubes. The button system, the way it clips in the back, maybe that was just crappy luck with mine. Do I think that there's a better way they can do it? Well, I don't think. I know there's a better way they can do it. However, they chose this route and, well, ultimately it does work. I do question the longevity of this system. Taking that backpack on and off could pose some concerns. However, just leaving it in your collection forever, you might never have any issues whatsoever. But the overall look of this guy is badass. Now, I have played Injustice, and I think that Art Figures has done a great job bringing this thing to life. The hard plastic on top of the cloth jacket, with the shoulder plates and the hoses in the back, overall does have a badass look. And I think they did a really good job with the tailoring overall. From top to bottom, the pants came out good, the pleather on the side, the pleather belt with the buckle on it, and then of course the color scheme is great. I truly do like those bright, vibrant green lines throughout this guy. I think it just brings a real cool look to him, and it'll be a standout figure in my collection because of that. And then lastly, they included a really nice stand. Nicely labeled on the front, a bat symbol, the grate, the paint application to it, and then on top of that, it has some nice width to it. So you have some breathing room as far as where to place his feet on this stand. And then of course, I didn't mention, but well, what you see is what you get. I do believe he comes with 6 extra hands, so you have 3 other pairs that come with this. There are no accessories with this guy other than the other pair of hands. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing, because I'm not sure what Bane would come with other than the very stereotypical crushed Batman mask. Now, with all that said, swinging into a score on this guy, it's actually going to be a pretty good one, believe it or not, and what comes to mind is an 8.7 out of 10. Now, the only thing that I do struggle with that score is, do I knock it harder because of the scale? If we were to truly include that into the scoring system, well, it would probably more be a 7.3, because the scale is severely off on this guy. However, I'm not going to do it. I'm purely going to judge it based off of him in a solo presence, so I feel comfortable sticking with an 8.7 out of 10. And of course, with that, do I recommend this guy? Absolutely. If you don't give a crap about the scale, just take a look at this thing, and I think right away you know that it is a great looking figure. Art Figures has done it again, which is an exciting thing to think about because we should make sure they are marked on our radar for future releases. And I absolutely would not complain if they continue to do any other characters from the Injustice video game series. There are so many cool characters in that game that I wouldn't care which one they did next. Any of them would be good, especially if they continued to build on the quality that we see in front of us. So with an 8.7 out of 10, we're going to go ahead and sign off here today at KC Toys. Bane from Injustice, not to be confused with Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, or the one with George Clooney and Uma Thurman!
Huh? Durr. Durr.